Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Meet a Poet session. I'm so pleased to introduce you to Paula Cisewski. She lives in Minneapolis, where she has taught writing privately and academically for over 2 decades. Her work has appeared in numerous literary journals, including Hanging Loose, 32 Poems, Plume, The Glacier, and Poetry Northwest. She has been awarded fellowships and residencies from organizations including the Jerome Foundation, the Minnesota State Arts Board, the Oberholtzer Foundation, Banfill-Locke Center for the Arts, and House of Helsinglight. Her poems have been nominated 3 times for a Pushcart Prize. Cisewski is the poetry curator for The Waves as well, a quarterly cabaret featuring poets and musicians performing a vibrant mix of astonishing, mysterious, beautiful new work. So, without any delay, I'll hand it over to Paula, who will read some of her poems, and then later on we'll get to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Blair. Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here reading today. So I want to thank the American Center in Moscow for having me. This is just wonderful. And I want to thank Tessa and Lucian and Mary. I really want to thank all of you who are listening as well. So I am going to begin by reading a selection of poems from my 5th book that came out in just this year. It's called Ceremonies for No Repair. I think I'm doing a little show and tell because it was a pandemic project, which I think everyone can relate to at a time when language and poetry was a little harder for me. And so I came to it through making images, and you'll see a lot of dandelions and a lot of other drawings and even comics in this book, which was a way for me to find my way back to language. The poems that I'll read from the collection are, I think, a little more like directly related to personal experience than other poems that I've written or published. And I believe that comes from like a really strong sense of knowing that every one of us who lived through 2020, we weren't just managing the solitude or the stress of the pandemic. All of us were going through other things. Some of these poems deal with, I lost my mother during that time, and a few other losses. And I think it's a way of maybe getting to that universal through a particular experience. So the first poem I'll read is called As If Wonder Were the Illness. We had entered into a dark time. The advice on repeat was trust the grieving process, but we'd already thrown trust a disappointing funeral, sparse mourners, sad lunch and ham. Then the refrain changed to, hey, at least we're still alive, which is only ever true for some of us. We put our masks on. We put our other masks on. Now we're hearing pleasure is a construct, not a natural phenomenon. We hunker down. Now we hear nothing. Is this still the dirty clothesline we call the dark time? When will the dark time end? No word. Has it ended? No one peeks through the curtains. No one splits open the drawn blinds. In the next poem I'm going to reference HBO Max, which I don't know if you have that in Russia, but just really bad streaming television. And I use the word plumule, which is just like that embryo of the plant that you can see if you open up a seed. So I have many poems in the collection with the same title, which is Ghost of Human Contact. And this is the first one I'll read today. Ghost of Human Contact. Stationed across a quarantine, one solitary night after another, light years between each star, to our eyes, a constellation implies a whole. Michael said as the group planned our next Zoom meeting, my asphalt calendar still asks for the location of events. After months of sheltering, I wrote cold mirages. I had no idea outside of winter. Every room of the house, a kind of altar I roamed through, votives on the sills, their lit overtures. See you soon, we text each other. Yes, scare quotes. Smiley face emoji, heart, heart, heart. All year I will want to be more what? But often I'll just sulk away, polar vortex nights in front of HBO Max and a new relationship with my own resistance, developing a twitch in my upper lip. The whole world, a single-minded wish I hadn't previously thought to notice. To be more everything. Remember possible desire, falling ringless. Remember two separate, equally stupid dreams last night about romantic longing, grief and grief and grief, then dinner. Early on, it was suggested we hug a tree. We were told, no, you're not alone in feeling alone. Loud music as rice boils, Big Joni in the kitchen, dance away the invisible feelings. In the dreams, I was either searching for something or hiding from something, unclear. Like waking life, it could have been a both and situation. In winter, a body waits, like any seed in a pouch, equal measure, neither resurrection nor burial, plumule of a future encased in a shell. I feel as though I am probably talking to a lot of poets, so I'm going to give you some information you may already know. In the collection of poems, there's a heroic sonnet, which is a 15 linked sonnets where the last line of each poem is the first line of the next poem, and then the 15th poem is all of the last lines. I'm going to read just a few of those. So, Mother Corona. A name is a plucked bloom that outlives you. Hers, Arlene, mother, other, never forgotten exactly, never secret, not resting unsaid through the hurt hours while her cancer's thriving, even as racists and a virus swarm. The world uncouples itself screen by screen, then redoubles pod by pod our bubbles. I overmother, underdaughter, troubling myself, my loved ones, asynchronously. Losses garland the budding solitudes, one's universe, some hollow stem, some scatter seed names. Can I chain together the looped wishes like that thing kids chant over dandelions? There are so many chants and songs from childhood, especially that have to do with wildflowers. I do reference a couple of them. I would always love to hear what other ones there are, so. Mother Corona, too. That thing kids chant over dandelions is, Mama had a baby and her head popped off. Which head? Which her? Or some kid would put like a fat bloom beneath your chin, and if the flesh glowed yellow, you liked butter? Do you like butter? Do you hate mother? Must you weave a flower crown of other to purge the bitterness of the mutter? Oh, ma, mama, mother, No expensive bouquet delivered to your bedside will brighten with cheery yellow and ribbon these hours we don't call your last. Our long-suffering mother in quarantine is not the first line of anything bright. I'm going to do another little bit of show and tell. In English, the sonnets are a little bit broken. I don't necessarily follow the traditional rhyme scheme. So if there's no rhyme in the translation, that's why. But I played with the form a little bit too. I'm going to read 6 and 7, which are contrapuntal poems, which means they're meant to be in columns. They're meant to be read both down and then as one poem across. So I'm going to read it that way. Mother Corona, 6 and 7. Much like memory, yellow bud that was. Sometimes I like when a person's forgotten something I've said, so I have the pleasure of saying it twice. How is your garden? She asked already early in the call. The light fades. I call my sister, say, Mom's dying tonight for sure. When I cry, my adulthood fizzles. Still, I want no consolation. The light fades, the world uncouples itself. Not every time, not this time. In the morning, I call the hospital again. Time proved me wrong. Our mother survived another night and quarantined, suffering still. How is your garden? She asks. Suffering still. How is your garden? She asks. Again, here are lilacs, iris, the lavender yellow of a new spring. Dandelion, she'd call them weeds. Pink roses, red tiger lilies, daisies appeared like goldenrod for bees, milkweed for monarchs flit around the purple coneflower, balm of anise hyssop, stinging nettle, doing my best to tend abundance, then like kudzu throttling the dogwood, cabbage moths flutter hungrily and spurge, cannot be saved. Everything cannot be saved or even tamed or even loved right. I don't know how anyone sleeps at night. Much like memory, yellow bud that was suffering still. How is your garden? She asks. Sometimes I like when a person's forgotten again. Here are lilacs, iris, something I've said, so I have the pleasure of the lavender yellow of a new spring. Saying it twice, how is your garden? Dandelion. She'd call them weeds. She asked already early in the call, pink roses, red tiger lilies, daisies. The light fades, I call my sister, say, Mom's appeared like goldenrod for bees, milkweed for dying. Tonight, for sure, when I cry, monarchs flit around the purple coneflower. My adulthood fizzles. Still, I want no balm of anise hyssop, stinging nettle, consolation. The light fades, the world undoing my best to tend abundance, then couples itself, not every time, not this time like kudzu throttling the dogwood. In the morning, I call the hospital. Cabbage mouths flutter hungrily and spurge. Again, time proved me wrong. Our mother cannot be saved. Everything cannot be survived. Another night and quarantined, saved, or even tamed, or even loved right. Suffering still. How is your garden? She asks. I don't know how anyone sleeps at night. I reference Sinead O'Connor and Neil Young in this poem, and I think they are universally beloved, but I don't know. Ghost of human contact. What is memory? So many photos document peak moments from stories that slope low later. Time will give every story an ending. What are endings? I'm in the basement. clearing out the ex's trash. How's this guitar still here? Pearl acoustic buried behind married years. It was mine once, but I recall giving it away. I could only ever play Sinead O'Connor's Black Boys on Mopeds, which uses the same chords as Neil Young's Helpless, and probably a lot of other songs too. You think you're playing one song, and someone tells you you're playing another. After the last bag went in the can, I didn't know what to do with the Hall of Sadness, so I drove to Home Depot and sat there in the lot, radio off, nebulously wanting, no shopping list. I watched the slow parade of people push their carts, trying with vinyl flooring or leaf blowers to make their homes better homes. Just because you're right doesn't mean another person's not also right, but damn it. I know which song I used to play, and it wasn't Helpless. It's not that time gives stories endings. What does any begun thing do but end? It's the new understanding of some particular endings. What is understanding? Another Ghost of Human Contact poem, which I realized was an older draft that I sent to be translated, and there's just one addition that I add at the very end. That's not in the origin in the translation. It's just 2 words. So if it seems surprising, I just realized they weren't in this version. So, Ghost of Human Contact. Anyone can transform a solitude into the site of either failure or creation, but don't forget to mute yourself or the host will do it for you. I'm at the kitchen table in a virtual work meeting, and I'm on my phone again, Googling what ex-wives do with the wedding gowns that ghost the backs of our closets. Some shred theirs, torch theirs, hem them short to wear on their revenge bods, or fly the gowns like kites. Some gowns get buried funeral style. This screen, that screen. My attention is often split between virtual spaces, which means I'm often more or less nowhere. Locatable answers do not satisfy. The meeting ends. The Googling ends. I walk through the park, notice 2 people. She's texting on a bench while he flies his drone over the baseball field. Imagine composing a eulogy for a gown when my dead mother was given no funeral. It's a pandemic. So little traffic these days that city workers have cordoned off every other street for walkers so that when we emerge from our homes alone, we can walk to the park alone, cross the center line alone. I could give the gown to a child for dress up, but I need never to glimpse it through a child's imagination. Not to keep circling back to it, but yes, actually, to keep circling back to it. What even is modern love? After months of fretting over lack of ritual, I return from a walk and throw the gown in the trash. Let it join the other trash in the dump where memories can't go. Generally, I want to repurpose everything, but I cannot repurpose this gown. Not as kindling, as toy, as glamour, as charity, as corpse. Red gown reused only in language, which, like grief and trash, is everyone's. A bunch of geese just flew past my window, which I'm not near, the water, so that was surprising to me. This is the last poem that I'll share from Ceremonies for No Repair, and then I'll read poems from a different collection. So. Listened to song that whole era when it never occurred to me to sing along. What are ghosts? Some black tar energy haunting my nape, according to a psychic. Troubles nestled, fears nestled, my neck craned was a crane, performing a verb with a long bird in it, not a machine. Kept thinking the same things and thinking there were new things. Broke the chrysocolla into 3 blue oceans on the floor. I was probably gawking at some morsel of the past again. Basically spent my days prolonging one silence by filling it fat. No matter how muted it felt then, most things amplified. You've got to clear that shit, the psychic said, if you want to let truth up and out the top of the bottle of you. Like everybody, I suspected that suffering wasn't helping quite as promised. What if Nietzsche had never gone viral with that "what doesn't kill us" quip? Even in that throat-locked era, it'd be a pleasure to go barefoot again through clover, I thought often, then opened the door to no field. Only a back alley. Only another night. There I was, shunning the moon when that feral cat I love from a distance skulked by to trip the neighbor's motion detectors. It saw me, and I saw it. We went from being 2 taciturn shadows to being whole animals, blinking. The sudden light wore our greeting like the dark inside its crown. That really is a book of grief and healing. The next poems that I want to share with you are from a collection called The Becoming Game, which is actually coming out next spring, but which I started after the 2016 election in the United States, which was heavy for a lot of us. I didn't know exactly what poetry meant to me at that time or how I would continue writing or if it mattered. What I knew was that I needed my community. And so what I did was I would invite one friend over and give them a tarot reading, and we would drink tea and have a conversation. And then over the next week, I would let whatever of the news was filtering in, whatever art and life experience was filtering in to resonate with the conversation we had. And then I would send them a draft of the poem. And that is how I wrote most of the next poems. So you don't really need to know anything about tarot cards to understand them, but that was the process and a way of finding my voice again at that time. American Tangle number 1. Waiting for the bank's drive-through teller to greet me from a screen, I realized I hadn't brought my cell along on errands, a little jolt of what if something happens, followed by a minor chord of disgust. Something we don't yet understand entangles us, an obstacle to our collective, to our convening. Artificial mycelium, cell tower, fairy rings everywhere. Unlike in a forest, a living being feeds the roots of trees, even as it feeds on them. Sounds okay from here, above ground, dare I say, rootless. Often distracted by my lack of a pocket device with which I would at best be doing what? Devising tonight's distraction or asking an app to direct my lost internal sense of some people with theirs write whole manifestos on the light rail. And does it matter? I don't know exactly where I am when I text loved ones from my device rather than bother them with leaving my voice on their device. Is such a tidy word, devised with an intent, also difficult to keep pushing out of my mind that metal for mine was mined by slaves. It's so disappointing when things are right there in the language and I live oblivious. Like recently, I had to visit a museum to learn that ground bones of buffalo strengthened colonists' bone china cups and saucers at high tea. I have come to find working within a net of multiple errors is an anxious passion, never not some obstacle to repair, recombine, revision, or just while distracted to drop and shatter the screen of again. Damn it. Device vines down from Old French devis, and before that from vulgar Latin divisare, in both cases meaning division or to divide. My device performed more slowly than yours, so goodbye, I guess forever, becomes a true story to share with strangers. This next poem is called Road Trip. It was my intent to work in, and it usually is in my poems, to work some of the confusion or the weight of dealing with the real issues that we're struggling with every day in our personal lives and in the ways our personal lives intersect with larger problems. So, road trip. Some groups of birds are called a different name depending on which element they're in. A flock of ducks in the sky or a paddling of ducks in the water, for example. Has someone forgotten to question a traditional structure? We were, as convention dictates, called a family when we were near one another and also when we were farther. Topography, noticed occasionally, as a nice backdrop to our ancestral spectacle on wheels, as we sought more suitable terrain for what's unnameable in each one of us. Nobody related to this scene has ever called any collection of any birds a paddling. Even on vacation, we called what we were making progress, that old saw, camper in tow, for no other reason than to cast our personal shadows across plural national monuments. Shed antler discovered at meadow's threshold. Can we keep it? Or any small token of a world we don't belong to? Why don't we? This whole voyage is beginning to sound autobiographical, but it's inspired by a profound nostalgia for nostalgia. Back in the bell jar of the imagination, the station wagon, moods domino, a Rube Goldberg contraption. We didn't know why we were fighting so close for so long. Then we weren't. Then we were again, passing a road sign that read, "Prison area. Do not pick up hitchhikers." Inside the high fence we travel by and soon forget lives a group of humans often called by different names than human. Anybody related to the scene might have family lost in there. See the landscape roll by, that parched red of memory's false heat. See the birds, whatever they're called, borrowing the sky. I am, depending on which side of my family, like which line you trace, I am either second or third generation American, and most of my family came from Poland. This poem is a little bit about, it's about losing culture and identity as you assimilate into dominant culture, the choices that families make and who gets to do that with more ease than others. The apple tree. This summer, a tree expert came out to tell me the pockmarks in my apples were probably maggots getting fat inside the fruit. I judged those apples rotten, though they were perfect for the worms. And it was perfect that I felt like a failure because I had failed to tend one tree. Later, a friend came over for tea. While we looked at pictures, something I misremembered about an image of victory being an uneven burden worked its way into our language. Unconsciously, I tried to impose that on her, as if she didn't have enough going on, choosing a best path forward. Sometimes I remember, and sometimes I misremember, and all the while the president is trying to detain everyone. I know what makes me safe-ish, but I don't want to say it. And that's why I say it when I do, clumsily, like I just learned a new word in a second language. Jabłka is apples in Polish, which I'm teaching myself, and which would be my other first language, had it not been smacked from my father's small mouth by a kindergarten teacher who wanted him to assimilate whitely. What if I say it's a gift to know what it means to have been the grower of a maggot feast? Can I throw the pocky apples in the compost and learn something new before spring? I'm checking my time. Okay, I have just a few more left. This is American Tangle number 2. I think when I write, I focus maybe a little obsessively on some certain themes and ideas, so titles get repeated. And this one is a golden shovel form, which was invented by the poet Terence Hayes, which means the last word in each line is from another text. And this is not from a poem, but I repeat 3 times a quote by the artist Louise Bourgeois. And it's, to unravel a torment, you must begin somewhere. I was at the end of a line, then I was only close to the end, even though the baby does not unravel a route home, which is not to say we did not travel a predictable, sticky silk web of joy and torment, which eternally begins at the word you. Said everybody wants to leave? You must have misunderstood my meaning. Let's begin here and work our way there, I guess, somewhere. Say St. Louis, a family unit parked by Louise Bourgeois' spider to stretch legs in a sculpture park. That we were about to unravel anything wasn't clear. The spider named Maman became a looming you, which we willingly stood below, a glorious torment next to which our car was a small blue egg and we hatchlings. You shadow legs, you made and making vessel, you must receive the past or your little weavers die stunted. Say we begin to work the brokenness of this particular somewhere, say this country, where an actual sitting president once said to several congresswomen, go back where you came from. Unravel that. Once my mother was told a thing she didn't know was a lie, and she told me, and here we are, still moving up in line, torment or no, bearing the unspeakers, unspoken truths that web any you to all yous. A wedding pattern, threaded and threading. It must be time to web some new never-ending in which we do begin broken and work away spoken, here, somewhere. In this poem, it really is another, I guess, American Tangle, and I borrowed Allen Ginsberg's American Sentences, which are 17-syllable lines. In English, haiku are always, the 3 lines of a haiku are always 5, 7, 5. So it's meant to be like a haiku in a sentence. And I really became enamored with that form reading Diane Seuss. So, which age of anxiety? Ring, ring, all the phone bank volunteers on anti-anxiety meds. No one answers our efforts, go to voicemail. Who leaves voicemails? Ring, ring. Sky haze reds out the sun fires wilding 1,000 Canadas away. Isn't a trip to therapy selfish? California's burning too. Don't lecture me about discipline when we don't misbehave enough. Think of Persephone and her brave tamed hunger, save for 3 damn seeds. People need help, and so few have the luxury of receiving help. My unspecial needs, my God, get underground and murk things the hell up. What about the past turns its back stubbornly, weapon drawn, be careful. What about a dream hung by the ankles still isn't doing nothing? Can't get lost enough, but we pay our admission through the corn maze roots. Mother Demeter would be so proud, but pride is not enough. Ring, ring. Ring, ring, our Xanax, our Klonopin, pomegranates. We're not leaving. We do our quests. We fail. Our naked shadows wear us curious suits. Oh, this is my final poem, and I probably will redundantly thank everyone for having me. It's really, really wonderful to be here. What was your first concert? My first concert was a red leaf. My first concert was Waiting for a Ghost in the Woods, or the tiny motor that runs your love. Once I was addicted to absence, thief of everything green, batting at nothing that's visible to me. My first concert was a cricket in a matchbox, a chorus of masking and unmasking so loud you didn't have to think. A horn section swaying in sharkskin. My first concert was the tree-lined sunset impression smeared on the mirror of the river and the current a goodbye underneath. A song from memory comes on the radio and time's accordion squeezes in, or the door slams shut on the moment and everything goes white. I was singing along to stay alive. My first concert was a hammock swaying greenless leaves. How is it you make me want to repeat everything? Everything. My first concert was seeking a second heartbeat, unapologetic, undaunted by a missed leap. Thank you all so much.
Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for your readings. You're sharing your poems. I'll get some started with some questions. I thought it was interesting. You were talking about, I think it was around 2020, meaning not just the writing, but the community aspect of poetry. And I think that's interesting, something we don't talk about as much. So I would love to learn more about like how you've built a community with your poetry. And I know you created some yourself, but how, and recommendations, I guess, for people who are interested in poetry, but not just want to write, want to use it to connect with people.
Yeah. I think it's so important. I know what we really do, like at the heart of our activity is so solitary, but for me, it was a non-traditional road to poetry for me. And one of the first things I did was to start like an open mic at I worked in like a jazz club.
Oh, fun.
During my undergraduate and graduate years. And starting to just get to know other people who were trying to grow their craft and be engaged, in this world, like really wondering what poetry is for. And so I have been lucky to curate some really wonderful events and find community that way. And also to always have writing groups and small, groups of trusted friends to share work with and discuss, At the time I was writing the first bunch of poems, it was a time when most people felt a lot of solitude during the pandemic. And the second bunch of poems, I think it was a time when a lot of people were looking to find a way to figure out why and how our voices mattered, and what that could look like and mean, and just like being fully aware as a poet that none of us writes in a vacuum, right? We've inherited this very long tradition, and so being able to share that and grow from that is so crucial in my mind.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you point out that it is inherently solitary technically when we're writing, but there is this possibility to connect with people. And could you just, out of interest, tell me a bit more about these cabarets? For all of you in Moscow, a cabaret is Paula might be able to explain a little bit better, but it's typically sort of not a play, it's sort of a mix in music, dance, and drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very lucky to be approached by an experimental composer named Maura Bosch, who asked me if I would like to help co-curate this event that happens roughly every 3 months. And yeah, it is a mix of experimental composers and other musicians like hurdy-gurdy players um, and poets. I mostly am in charge of inviting poets, so a variety, of spoken words and page poets, and all different types of poetry. And there's often a multimedia aspect too. There have been photographers and video artists and people playing music with video. There have been some kind of more theatrical performances. And that was always her vision. Yeah, it was just like, and part of her vision too was always to have the musicians and the poets collaborate. So they'll do something individually, and then in the second set they come together and collaborate, often right on the spot. It's really magical, yeah, to see these things kind of coming to life for the first time. It's definitely the most eclectic event that I've ever had a hand in curating, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I wouldn't traditionally think of cabaret with poetry, so that's interesting that you've incorporated it.
Agree. Yeah.
And kind of on that note, you talked about a couple styles, haikus, sonnets. Is there any, because I know there's, more traditional forms, and then, there's more modern forms of poetry. Are there any recommendations you have for people to experiment, or maybe for beginner poets, some styles that you think are helpful to test out and play with, kind of as you're learning and practicing poetry?
Mm-hmm. All of them. When I was getting my master's degree so quite some time ago, I will admit that I was a little resistant to formal poetry at first. I was very interested in the craft, uh, sound, line, everything, theory, but I was resistant to writing formal poetry myself, and I had an advisor who forced me to write in form. And so I wrote, a Sestina, I wrote a Pantoum, I wrote a Villanelle, I wrote a Crown of Sonnets, and experimented from there. And I can't tell you how it informed my writing going forward and my choices, even when I'm writing free verse. When I choose form now, I often play with the form and break. Like my sonnets are often broken, but I know that I'm breaking them with intention and not just because I don't know the rules. So, yeah, I think it's such a great thing to do. Even if, and I will say that those earlier experiments of mine, I don't think that I rushed out to publish any of them. You know, I probably borrowed lines from them in the future and let some of them go. But just as far as writing as a practice and honing your craft, I think it, for me, um, it tuned my ear into the music on the page more than many other things did. So if you're having obsessive, feelings or, then probably you want to start with a villanelle or a pantoum or even a sestina. If you feel like you've got an argument you want to explore, you probably want a sonnet,
And that's interesting that you mentioned the craft versus form. So when, for whether it's new or established poet, I guess, what are the things to kind of look for? Obviously the form, the format is one thing, and then you mentioned a couple other things that really sort of form the heart of poetry. Something, sound, I think, was one of them, for example.
Yeah. One of the things that I feel is the best and most important to me, and the reason that I come back to writing as a practice, is surprise. So I rarely write the poem that I think I'm going to write, you know. There's just ways that we know that are beyond logic, right? So we have to know them maybe logically, but also maybe on an unconscious level, maybe in an emotional way. They're just so what I look for in a draft, or when I think something is finding its shape, whether that's in a form, which is not the most common thing for me, or if it's a free verse poem, is how the language plays and expands the idea beyond my original idea, finding that discovery. Jack Myers called it writing in discovery mode. And sometimes the sound is what leads you there, or the etymology of a word, or the connection you make on the page because of a word, a word choice. But for me, yeah, it's looking for that surprise, and then honing it through sound and how the lines can play based on how you're laying out the piece on a page.
For some of our listeners who are interested in reading some more poetry and trying writing it, what would be, I guess, like 3 poets that can be classical or modern poets would you recommend them reading?
3. Oh, okay.
You can give more. Like, you can give 3 to 5 if you'd like.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I mentioned Diane Seuss and I mentioned Terrence Hayes. Um, Rilke was a big first poet for me. Alice Notley, Claudia Rankine. Hua Win does a lot of work with bent forms and broken sonnets and other kinds of experiments that I admire quite a lot. I don't know. I feel like I could spend the hour just naming poets who are important to me.
And I will be honest, my poetry knowledge is mostly, older poets, maybe some, and Sexton is my favorite, but that's still going back. So are these mostly more modern poets?
For the most part, yeah. Not so much Rilke, but the rest, yeah, definitely are working and creating right now. Yeah, yeah. I love Anne Sexton too. I have a button that says I have been her kind. I don't remember where I got it, but it's a treasure.
And then one last question I always like to ask everyone that comes on here is, what advice can you give to someone who's interested in, writing poetry, learning about poetry, getting started?
Okay, yeah. I think the first and most valuable thing is to remember that if this is important to you, that you really have to carve out the time to do it. I believe it's universal that anywhere we are, we have other obligations and passions and commitments and connections that are pulling our time, right? But if this is a practice that centers you and helps you know yourself more deeply, that you'll only be more connected to all of those things if you commit to the time that you can to honor that and to create what you need to create and find your voice.
And so, I guess just sitting down and writing something is enough, would you say? Just to
Yes.
get started.
Yeah, reading, deciding what you like and don't like about other people's work, right? And why. And then writing in response, writing in argument, writing, yeah. I'm not the first writer to say those are the only two things you can do to, well, that's not true. You read and write and live, I guess is the third thing. So, but it is making that commitment because it's the most important to you, and that's okay. That is the most important to you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the session and being here. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday as well.
You as well.